Hi, I'm April. I am a singer-songwriter and music teacher, and a couple of weeks ago I embarked on a 14-day lyric writing challenge set forth by the Songwriter Coach. So today I'm going to give you my takeaways from the challenge, let you know how I did, and give you a few more tips for staying consistent with your songwriting. If you happen to miss my last video on staying consistent with your songwriting, you can watch it right there. In that video, I gave a lot of really general tips. So in this video, I figured I would get much more specific, and today we're going to talk about the specific challenges that I faced, and hopefully they're going to be translatable to your life. And if you're at all curious, you can check out the link in the description to hear the unmixed, unmastered, imperfect versions of all of my songs from my 14-day lyric writing challenge. So let's get started. So I mentioned this a little bit in the last video, but I figure it bears repeating because it's really important, and that is that you should keep a notebook where you have all of these beautiful ideas that you come up with. Personally, for me, it is in my phone. I have a folder in my notes app called Sparks, and my Sparks folder is where I put all of those little miscellaneous things like chord progressions or little lyrics that come to me here and there. You can do this in any form that feels comfortable for you, but I found that in my process, this was the thing that kept me going on any day that I felt like I didn't particularly know what to write. Whenever I felt like I needed inspiration or an idea to start with, the Sparks folder gave me something concrete that I could work with right away, and it allowed me to build on something that I had come up with years ago or even a week ago. I think it's a great way to go from one of the more abstract prompts to something a little bit more concrete. Another thing you can do is listen to a lot of music, which I know sounds really obvious, but while you're listening to music or even reading books or watching TV shows or consuming media in any form, make sure that you're doing it with intention. So set goals for yourself. Look out for storylines. Find different characters or different archetypes. You can always use a song that you really love as inspiration for a song that you're going to write next. So pick it apart, figure out why you love it, and then work backwards from there. Another place to look when you're struggling for ideas is inside of your room. So just look around, see what's there. For instance, I could look around and see that there is a microphone in front of my face. From just this microphone, I could write a song about feeling like you're not being heard. Or I could write a song from the perspective of an actor on a stage. The possibilities are endless, and you can always find inspiration in any space if you just look around. So just start with something really super small, and from there you can build that concept out until you have a fuller idea. You can also look back through your memories. For instance, on day 8 of my challenge, I wrote a song about a dock on the Charles River where I used to sit when I was in college. Now, I completely made up the story around the actual dock, but the dock itself gave me a really beautiful image that I could then work from. At that point, if you just start to describe the scenery, you might find that a story just starts unraveling in the process. When I'm struggling to come up with a chord progression, I find that the thing that helps me the most is variety. If I can't think of a chord progression, my immediate impulse is to change something that I'm doing. So for instance, you might notice that in the different videos of me playing my songs every day, I'm usually in a different spot in my apartment, or I'm playing a different instrument, and I'm usually starting in a different key or with a different pattern. I find that this is the number one thing that keeps me from getting stuck, because frankly, it keeps me from getting bored. If I were to sit in the same space every single day and play the same instrument and do everything exactly the same, like same strumming patterns, same vocal melodies, I would start to get really bored and songwriting wouldn't feel quite as fun anymore. So what I like to do is try lots of different methods and different approaches. Sometimes I write the lyrics first, sometimes I write the chords first, sometimes I write a melody and then see if I can find chords that are going to match with it. But all around, the best thing to do is try something different. Keep in mind that it is also totally okay to outsource your chord progressions. You can literally just find a song that you love and just steal the chord progression. By stealing or outsourcing your chord progressions, you're actually going to learn a lot about your instrument or about the way that chord progressions can work. This is honestly a great way to keep you from getting bored with the songs you're writing. And you'll find some really interesting progressions just by searching what other people have done before. Now, obviously, you don't want your song to sound exactly like someone else's song, so make sure that all of the other elements of the song are coming from you yourself. Chord progressions cannot be copyrighted, so you're going to be totally fine on that front. and you should just take inspiration anywhere you can find it. Probably not, but maybe. So this is kind of a tough one, and for me this is something that comes up pretty frequently, where I hear a song in my head and I start playing it and I love what I'm writing, and then it occurs to me that it sounds like something I've heard before, but I can't exactly place where I've heard it before. There were a couple of days during this challenge where I thought, am I making this song up, or did I hear it somewhere and now I'm just copying it from whatever memory of it is in my head? But the problem is, if you don't know where you're stealing it from, is it possible that you're not actually stealing it and that it is something that's just coming up in your brain? Like, how do you tell the difference between the two? But chances are, no, you did not steal this song. Our brains are really good at making connections between things. It's one of those innately human traits that we tend to want to see connections between things. In fact, I would venture to say that creativity is 99% just taking two things and smushing them together to see what happens. So usually when you make up a melody that sounds familiar, it's just your brain taking a bunch of songs that you really love, and because it's made up of a bunch of different songs that are really familiar to you, your new melody is going to sound just familiar enough that you're going to question whether you actually came up with it. Now, is it possible that you've completely lifted the melody from somebody else's song and you've just like outright stolen it? Yes, absolutely. Of course it's possible. But again, the likelihood is really small. Plus, in the process of actually fleshing that song out by giving it chords and by writing new lyrics, and even by using different instrumentation or arrangements, it's gonna wind up sounding really different from that original song anyway. There is a very slim chance that you're just going to wind up completely lifting the entire orchestration of a Beatles song. So yeah, maybe you accidentally rewrote the melody to Hey Jude. And it's so noticeable that everybody knows that you lifted the melody of Hey Jude. Just for argument's sake, what's the worst that's gonna happen? You get super famous, you release this song, everybody loves it, then they subsequently realize that it's Hey Jude, and you might get in some trouble. This is basically what happened with Sam Smith when he released the song Stay With Me, and everybody realized that it was exactly the same melody as I Won't Back Down. In that particular case, Sam Smith apologized, said that it was involuntary, and then proceeded to put Tom Petty on the liner notes. And of course, Tom Petty is getting some of the royalties as well. Now, obviously, this isn't the case for every single time that somebody's stolen a melody, but again, chances are this situation is not going to come up in the first place, so I think you're gonna be just fine. This was probably the most difficult thing for me personally throughout this entire challenge. First of all, I am a huge perfectionist, and I want to make sure that my songs are beautifully crafted and perfect when I release them to the world, which is of course very difficult if you're writing a song every single day for 2 weeks. I get really concerned that my song isn't good enough and that people are going to judge it. And so of course the world is going to judge me for recording a song in my pajamas, or that I decided not to use my big fancy lights or put on any makeup for all of these videos. But of course, the obvious answer here is that nobody really cares. Not only did people not care about my pajamas or my glasses or the fact that I wasn't wearing any makeup, people were really proud of me for posting something every day. I was really proud of myself for posting every single day. It's a really hard thing to do, and even if your song or your video or whatever else isn't perfect, the fact that you're doing it is the most important part. So yes, perfectionism was a very big struggle for me over these last 2 weeks, and I'm really proud of myself for having conquered that perfectionism. But the other thing is, when you release music that sounds sad or angry or happy or anything, people are immediately going to hear what you've written and try to place it on your life. So this is just sort of something that we have to deal with as songwriters. The idea that sometimes people might take our art and assume that it is a direct representation of everything that's happening in our lives. But I think it's 100% worth it to start having those kinds of conversations. So if somebody asks me, hey, your songs sound sad, are you okay? I can immediately talk about the things that inspired that last song, or why it might have sounded sad. Maybe I was writing from a character, or maybe I was writing from a past memory. And I think that those are all really beautiful, great places to start when you're writing a song. So the moral of this story is, don't worry about what anybody else has to say about your work, whether it's sad or imperfect or whatever. Just be proud of yourself for having gotten it out there, because I think that's one of the hardest parts. On day 5 of this challenge, I had the worst headache ever, all day. It was terrible, and I felt like I really did not want to write my song for that day. So I struggled the entire day with trying to write something, and I even missed the time I had built into my schedule and had to write my song after work that day. So you can totally leave this up to willpower, or you can use the fact that you're putting it out into the world as a way to keep yourself accountable, or you can use this as a moment to remind yourself that songwriting is supposed to be a thing that makes you happy. And if right now songwriting is not making you happy, that is okay, but it's also a great opportunity to get yourself back into that headspace. There were a lot of not so glamorous times during these last 2 weeks where writing a song felt difficult. But upon actually sitting down and writing the song, I always felt better afterward. There's something really cathartic about sitting down and writing a full song. Not only have you accomplished something on a day where you felt like you weren't going to get anything done, but you're also able to take those really hard feelings and channel them into something positive. As I mentioned before, that day was really tough for me because I had a big headache, I didn't want to write a song, and so I wound up not doing it earlier in the day and doing it a little later instead. There were also a couple of days where one of my students canceled and had to do a makeup lesson, and it totally interfered with the time I had set aside for songwriting. And there were a few days where I had to film and edit and upload a video about chorus writing, which you can watch right there. But point being, it can be really difficult to keep your schedule consistent. These schedule changes could have totally derailed my plans, but instead I was flexible and I just found ways to move things around. There's nothing wrong with changing your self-imposed restrictions. If another time is better for you, even just one of the days, that's okay, as long as you make it happen, get it done. Don't beat yourself up in these situations, and instead just remember that people and circumstances are never perfect, and that you just have to adapt. There were days where I tried to follow the prompt, but the song didn't really want to go in that direction, and I just sort of let the song go the way that it wanted to. Songs can be kind of fickle like that. So if you're writing a song and it does not fit the prompt at all, that's okay. Let yourself write the song that is coming out of you at that moment. As long as you're recognizing why the prompt exists and what you can gain from using that prompt in the future, you're not losing anything by not using that specific prompt in this specific song. Just do your best to use that prompt in another song at another time, and you'll be just fine. And with that said, I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Let me know how your songwriting challenge went, if you intend to start one soon. What kind of struggles did you experience, or do you anticipate experiencing? And of course, subscribe to the channel and ring that little bell to be notified the next time I post.